So I think we can begin now. So hello and greetings from the team Let's Talk Tatwa. I'm Ananya, and I extend cordial welcome to everyone present here for the seventh installment of Philosophy with Scholar series. I'll be the host for today's session. We at the team of Let's Talk Tatwa are a philosophy discussion forum that has been trying to take philosophy beyond its conventional spaces and modes and discover it in any act of philosophizing itself in whatever form, shape, genre, or any place that we might discover it. While we are at it, we would like to thank our audience who have been a source of inspiration by participating in our initiatives for over 3 years now. Hopefully, our spirits and consequently our endeavors would only intensify in future with your presence in upcoming monthly discussions. In today's lecture, we are joined by Professor Abey Koshy, who will be aiming to present Nietzsche as a philosopher who challenged humanity to break free from the constraints of traditional philosophical, religious, and moral ideas to build a future liberated from resentment, guilt, and asceticism, a future in which humans can creatively flourish. Nietzsche's core themes, nihilism, the will to power, becoming tragic, are woven together to draw a radical ethico-political vision from his works. A brief bio of Professor Koshy. Professor Koshy is a former professor and head of department at Sree Sankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kalady. He completed his PhD at Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, and conducted his postdoctoral research at IIT Delhi. His academic contribution includes 4 books, 20 peer-reviewed research papers, and 60 invited talks, presentations at national and international conferences. He also writes in Malayalam journals on different cultural issues. His books include Nietzsche's Ethical Political Thought for Posterity, 2025, published by Ethics Press, UK, and Affirmation of Will to Life, Love, Fascism, Art, published in Malayalam by Soochika Books in 2020. Nietzsche, Rise of Postmodern Sensibility in Malayalam, published by SPCS, NBS, Kottayam 2022. So the format of today's talk is Professor Koshy would talk for about 45 minutes. We'll open the panel for open the floor for discussion. So we can raise our hands and then we can ask questions to Professor Koshy. Over to you, Professor Koshy.
Thank you, Anani Mishra, and I'm glad to meet you all in this platform. And it is an occasion for me. I appreciate this as an occasion for me to deliver a talk on Nietzsche, the favorite philosopher of all of us, to a learned audience like you, the scholars of Department of Humanities, IIT Delhi. And initially, you asked me to deliver a lecture on my book. When I looked at, I find it is too wide to speak on the entire because it considers takes up various issues, various angles on issues. So it would not be possible to bring all of them in a talk that spans only 45 minutes or 1 hour. So what I did was to cut short and to focus on one particular issue, but I hope it is connected with most of the major issues of Nietzsche's philosophy, like nihilism, will to power, ascetic ideal, and eternal recurrence. I hope, because Nietzsche is a familiar philosopher to all of us, is a popular philosopher, so I think it would be easier for you to communicate this talk to all of them. And I present Nietzsche here as a philosopher who have brought up a politics, a subtle politics, a grand politics, which is not visible in his philosophy. Mostly, Nietzsche is a philosopher who is considered as an apolitical thinker or anti-political thinker, and who has more favored aristocratic elitism. But I would like to find a subtle politics, a great politics from his thought. And it is part of his project of overcoming nihilism. Nietzsche sought to bring a new age to Europe that transfigures the present one produced by Christian Platonic tradition that spans past 2000 years. In the new age, the goals of humanity would be entirely different from the ones set by the Enlightenment modernity that guides our present society and lives. For that, Nietzsche perceived that a rupture in the present civilization is necessary. The present civilization he sees as a product of slave morality, which propagated resentment, guilt, and asceticism among people by the Christian Platonic tradition of the past 2000 years. It came into existence by overthrowing Greek antiquity. It ordered the world in the interest of the weak and incapable people, as Nietzsche says. For the emergence of a new civilization, a rupture in the present civilization is necessary. Zarathustra is a prophet who proclaims the advent of a new civilization. The venture of Nietzsche is perceived as an attempt to find a new ethico-political thought for posterity to adopt. That is the angle from which I'm looking at the problem. And he did not view world history in the Hegelian model as a linear development or as a progression from a lower level to a higher one, bringing newer and newer ages as time passes. His vision of time, expressed in the concept of eternal recurrence, on the other hand, envisioned a repetitive temporality through which he sought to explain that history unfolds through ruptures, accidents, and reversals. The will to power, which, as all of you know, a desire for more, desire to grow higher and to be enhanced. The will to power of the agents who participate in history building activity is a significant determinant in the formation of events and ages in world history. Modern period for Nietzsche is, he sees it as a period of nihilism that erodes the worth of life. Nihilism is a situation of meaninglessness and aimlessness faced by humanity. Its outcome was very alarming. The 20th century was a time that was devastated by two world wars, valuelessness, and meaninglessness. And this period had witnessed the rise of fascism, mass massacre, ecological degradation, and terroristic attacks. Everywhere there was a loss of faith in human goodness and reason. This was the present era we are living in. While Enlightenment modernity went on with its claim that everything would be safe in our world order, Nietzsche observed that modern period and modern civilization was utterly anti-life, superficial, and hollow. Nietzsche saw the roots of modern civilization in hatred, enmity, and vengeance. He hoped that a new era in the future, man would find a divinity within empirical life itself. Earlier, divinity was sought in transcendental realm, but Nietzsche's project is to bring in empirical life itself without resorting to a search for supernatural realm. Nietzsche envisioned a future society where humans could interact with one another without resentment and guilt, thereby creating a world without ascetic withdrawal from life. Had Nietzsche put forth any political ideals? This is the question. When people hear about the politics of Nietzsche, the immediate thing that comes to their minds is Nazi ideology. Or many view Nietzsche as a apathetic to politics, a person who was apathetic politics. To some interpreters, he does not prefer any explicit political philosophy at all. If political ideal exists in him, they are more closely aligned with aristocratic elitism. These were the existing political readings about Nietzsche's philosophy. However, Nietzsche's apolitical stance was actually the outcome of his rejection of the petty politics of his time, our modern times, which should not obscure the profound politics he has, a subtle politics underlying in his reflections. Nietzsche presents a subtle political vision whose macro character does not micro character does not make it visible in a world dominated by gross political ideals such as democracy, state, political parties, which are all outcome of resentiment. Political parties are necessities only for those who are powerless, and its very purpose is to gain power by uniting all all those powerful, the disgruntled and defeated people. Because while coming together, they get power in aggregation. The aim behind those who form such parties and religious groups was to mobilize people to oppose and defeat those who are faring well, better than them in life. As we see, witness in many contemporary political practices in our country as well as elsewhere. A group's power was essential for leaders to limit the actions of the active and joyful people. This is the politics prevailing in our times, which Nietzsche viewed as nihilistic and reactive to life. His project of overcoming nihilism of the modern age is needed overcoming and transfiguring this anti-life politics of modernity. Unless politics enables change to happen in the ethical and moral foundations of modernity, there would not be any use with such politics. Hitherto, the prevailing politics, which is gross politics, have been only defending, preserving, and reinstating these moral foundations, and it is rooted in spirit of revenge. Nietzsche aimed to produce a new dawn for humanity, for which the present politics, grounded in ideals of democracy, equality, and nation states, would not be sufficient. A great politics shall be rooted in the transfiguration of the present human existence, which is mired in guilt and resentment. Petty politics, inculcated by slave morality, is meant to destroy one's enemy by projecting him as an evil other who does not deserve life. And Nietzsche's politics lies in this project of, as I was telling in the beginning, part of project of overcoming nihilism that has gripped humanity to its core. What was nihilism? Nihilism, in a nutshell, is degeneration of life in modern times, meaninglessness, the erosion of values. Various senses of nihilism are these: denial of worldly existence and a lack of purpose in life, feeling a goallessness in life. And Nietzsche addresses these problems and try to seek to find some remedy. Nihilism is caused by the working of the negative will to power. Uh, he speaks of two types of will to power: the affirmative and negative. Will to power, as all of you know, is the essence, the unconscious driving, triggering force within all organisms, including humans. Nietzsche was the first to state that the motivating force in humans is not a pleasure-seeking drive or a desire to merely persist in life by warding off death, but it is power that triggers, motivates humans forward. A desire to grow more and increase strength. Nietzsche identifies two types of willpower, the affirmative and the negative. The affirmative is the active, the negative is the reactive or nihilistic. Although there may be forces of reaction and nihilism in every age, they mostly remain dormant, silent, or kept under check. So they cannot come to dominance or assert their power in all periods of history. When positive and affirmative forces predominate in cultural life, nihilistic forces remain silent. However, nihilism reigns powerfully and ascends in modern times when life affirmative forces weaken. Nietzsche explains depreciation of values, loss of faith, aimlessness, meaninglessness in life, the abandonment of natural and instinctive desires of humans, as we see in contemporary world, as these are all symptoms of nihilism. Nietzsche's philosophical analysis of nihilism is grounded in the central notion of his thought will to power, which I said as I tried to reach to heights of one's life through intense life experiences. It is a force that works within all bodies, not only organic or human bodies, but even inorganic and inanimate, to grow more and overcome hurdles. It is found in all the elevated feelings of humans. It is experienced when one is successful in his work, or gains achievement, or rules over others, gains fame, powerful positions, victories. In all these instances, it is human power is enhanced and exalted. One feels as if he has grown above all others. This is the motive that guides human as well as other organic and inorganic bodies. Although the feeling of power can be experienced in many different fields, as I was telling, this victory, powerful position.
Mr. Himanshu, I have a suggestion.
Hello, sir.
As
Yes.
as we're waiting for Dr. Koshy to come back on, can we have a little
Yeah.
discussion maybe? Just to use the time in a useful way.
Yeah.
Sure, definitely, definitely.
So if I may,
Yeah,
I just have a question, and somebody here. So I'm from the West. I'm from the Netherlands and the US, and I've studied some Nietzsche and his politics. I'm actually wondering who would be in the East, in Asia, either India, China, or Japan, be the philosopher who would be closest to Nietzsche's ideas. Let's say, who in the East might be the most optimistic nihilist that you can think of?
I Professor Schuler. So, I mean, based off Nietzsche's readings of a bad translation of Manusmriti, he was pretty enthusiastic about how the laws of Manu were kind of formulated, I think in the Twilight of Idols, he bestows like heavy praise, but like later scholarship kind of showed that his praise is based on the bad translation of the work. But anyways, the bottom line for his politics, at least from how I see it, is one is that in a letter to George Brandes, the Danish critic, so George Brandes described to Nietzsche in his letter that he sees his political vision as aristocratic radicalism of sorts. And then Nietzsche replies to him in a letter, "Kyo, that's the best description of my position that I've personally heard." So that's uh, one position that we have that comes straight from Nietzsche, but in his personal correspondences. And secondly, so Pierre Klosowski has this work called Nietzsche and a Vicious Circle, and he tries to outline anti-Hegelian what politics Nietzschean politics would look like in a certain sense. And his claim is that Nietzsche would not endorse any politics that would, bring down impulses of the creative impulses of the crowd. So he calls something gregarious impulse and erectile impulse. Gregarious impulse is kind of engaged in leveling field. So if you're feeling very intensity of any emotion, gregarious impulses would kind of try to level it down and bring it. It's basically an averaging impulse, where on the other hand, erectile impulses are the impulses that increase the intensity. They aid the process itself. So for instance, Nietzsche's disagreement with democracy, is in part based with his assessment of, democracy as an average kind of, as in political system that brings out, at least in his time, brings out the average in people and not the best in people. So I think this Professor Andreas or Sommer, who writes about how Nietzsche would not have any problem with democracy had the movement of intensity of emotions or impulses had been, if the other way around, that instead of being an averaging force, democracy was a erectile force. Instead of bringing people down to their averages, for instance, how it was in Socrates' time, in Nietzsche's assessment as well, it was the other way around. So, for instance, our best selves are kind of being brought out in democracy. So, to answer your question, if we are going directly by Nietzsche's own references, he endorsed Manu to a certain extent, but then we know that it was based on a bad translation of the text. And yeah, so that would be my take. Others can jump in and
Uh,
add to it.
Just to it, I think there's someone in the room, Amarjit, who's also working on exploring the nihilism. I won't say East or whatever he thinks, but maybe he can comment more on this. Amarjit, would you like to?
What was the question exactly?
Can you please
Oh, if
repeat?
I may repeat, the original question is like who in the in the East would be closest to the what I call optimistic nihilism of Nietzsche. Um, I'm aware, of course, that he is working in the 19th century Germany, where all kinds of modernistic things are happening: industrialization, democracy, corporate powers. I mean, he has a lot to say about the ideologies there: Marxism, anarchism, etc., etc. So I'm aware that of course we have to put him in a historical context about the politics in his own time. But I could see that he might have been taken up by Asian thinkers, trying to think through his ideas, his political ideas, and maybe reformulate them that would be more appropriate for Asian culture. I'm thinking along those lines a little bit.
It's a very interesting question. I think you've hit the nail on the head already. That it's there's this very specific social, political, religious background in which someone like Nietzsche was able to flourish. Something like that has not really happened in South Asia or East Asia, as it were. You could make arguments about, and many people have made the arguments about how there are parallels between certain readings of early Buddhism and Nietzsche. So lots of these philosophical pessimists have made those arguments as well. But Schopenhauer, of course, was supposedly influenced by Upanishadic and Buddhist thought. But again, it's nothing greater than a kind of superficial resemblance that you're going to find over there. I think what would be really fascinating, though, would be if we ask what exactly nihilism amounts to outside of its cultural context. And Jacobi is such an important thinker there because he is able to trace philosophy as being fundamentally a nihilistic enterprise, which is then taken over later on by Heidegger. So that I think you can very easily find not just resemblances, but stronger articulations of in philosophers as early as Nagarjuna, and his influence in Shen Buddhism in China or in Zen Buddhism in Japan. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Yeah. No, that's interesting that you get into the Buddhist um, way of thinking, where life, I mean, in some schools, there's nothing intrinsically, transcendentally, valuable in life, and so you have to make the best out of it. Um, by coincidence, I was just reading up on this great book that was also inspired by Eastern thinking, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, because it is just almost like 50 years ago that it was published. It had an enormous impact in the West, and I'm now a little bit trying to read what the reception was of that book in India. There was some reception of it, but he also comes very close to ideas of dharma, that underlying all our rationality, there is a certain truth, there's a certain value, and we have to get in connection with it so that our lives can be lived. Not strictly rational and not strictly anti-rational, but somehow a nice balance where we can incorporate technology. So I'm thinking in that direction, because Nietzsche, in the end, there is something very positive about him. The saying yes, because of his idea of the eternal return. You just have to take it as it is and go with it, and don't resent it, what's happening to you. I'm just kind of free flowing here to make connections. So maybe more specific. Besides Dr. Koshy, who would be in these times in India, a philosopher that really, let's say, infuses Indian philosophy with Nietzsche's ideas? Because Nietzsche's ideas are still trickling through culture, even after 150 years. His ideas, they're so powerful that its processing is still happening. He's still so relevant in any setting now, in the East, the West, the North, the South. So I'll go with that specific question. Like, who would be the most intermediating between Nietzsche and Indian culture in this regard? Besides Dr. Koshy, of course, then.
I think you might be very interested, if you haven't come across him already, to read or listen to the lectures of Osho, who was this 20th century kind of neo-spiritual guru, but with a somewhat unique message of hedonism, rejecting religious authority, rejecting transcendental philosophies, or philosophies of transcendence and so forth. Have you come across his work?
Well, certainly. Now, I've come across many of its followers in the West. So I'm into Krishnamurti. I'm in Nihu, Northeastern Hill University, doing my PhD on Krishnamurti. And I've been to the Krishnamurti meetings in Switzerland in the early 80s. I'm a little older than you guys, but so there were many of his followers, Osho, or the Rajneesh people, we call them. And there was interesting interaction between the Krishnamurti people and the Osho people, because the Krishnamurti people, a little bit infused by Krishnamurti himself, they were very very civilized, posh, well-educated, well-behaved, kind of what Krishnamurti was projecting. Some called him an Edwardian gentleman. And then the Osho people, who were more provocative and challenging and sometimes outright, indeed nihilistic. So yeah, I got into Osho in comparison then with and in clash with Krishnamurti. But I take your suggestion, what he did. So, for example, I studied in Amsterdam. I'm coming from Amsterdam, and there was a dancing place, and it was called oh, what was that? The Buddha. Kazantzakis. He was a writer. He wrote something about a hedonist, a Greek hedonist. I forgot his name, but so this dancing place had this combination of Buddhist attitudes at the same time, going for hedonism. You can get drinks there, you could get drugs there. There was kind of sensuality. The music was very, very danceable. So yeah, I can see your connection there of this worldly way of both spirituality and sensuality.
You're
Just
talking about Zorba the Greek.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Zorba the Buddha, that was the name of
Yeah,
the
okay,
dance
right.
place. Exactly.
also just to add to the conversation, Osho has, I think, a commentary on Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and also he has a talk titled Nietzsche, a Great Danger or a Great Freedom, that I think he delivered in 1986 or something. So yeah, just to add to it, he has a book.
Yeah, because he was a professor of philosophy
Yeah,
originally in Pune.
yeah.
But nonetheless, I would still insist that Nietzsche did. I mean, maybe this is just belaboring the point, but Nietzsche did exist in this very specific era of lots of intellectual flourishing going on in Germany. That kind of era is, maybe it existed, we don't know. People claim it existed these many thousands of years ago, whatever, in India. But I don't think South Asia has ever really had that kind of intellectual flourishing. It has always been a very specific, highly limited group of people who have been engaged in intellectual endeavors. So, on the other hand, the sort of philosophies, otherworldly philosophies that Nietzsche is railing against have been, you could argue they have been predominant, or you could argue they haven't, based on how you're going to read them, because that has never really been the preoccupation of the thinkers, because the thinkers have themselves had other preoccupations, because the thinkers have themselves not really been speaking to the masses, as it were, right? So I think unless that kind of democratization of freedom to access of intellectual work takes place, someone like Nietzsche cannot really emerge, as it were, who would then question that democratization, would then question that free access to, or everyone having an opinion, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah, especially like I think scholars have also pointed out the importance of Nietzsche's Lutheran heritage, sort of that kind of inculcated the spirit of the very thing that we associate with him. And as Amarjit is pointing out that, like we've never had that kind of but that intellectual flourishing in the sense of that very specific insistence on questioning the tradition as if it were in a very heterodox manner.
Yeah, connecting to Ananya, I'm thinking of, because you mentioned Krishnamurti and he was heavily interested in discarding any sort of gurudom, as he called it. Do you have any comment to make on it? Go on.
Yeah, you want me to comment on his position on teachers and gurus? Yeah, well, kind of paradoxically, he's seen as the greatest anti-guru. I mean, you go to his gathering and there are like 2,000, 3,000 people, and they're all, beautifully meditatively silent. And then this old guy comes on the podium, and basically he is doing a monologue. but says like, let's think together, let's experience together. I'm not your teacher. Are you still with me? Because he's digging into very interesting existential phenomena, fear and desire, the overcoming of it, the causes of it. And it's a very Buddhist discourse. I'm doing a little research on saying that he's almost following the Four Noble Truths of Buddha in the structure of his discourse. He first says, man is suffering, conflict, inner conflict, outer conflict, wars, and within ourselves, the tension between what is and what should be. And then he gets into, well, is there a cause? Let's see the underlying mechanism that makes us suffer so much. And so that's the second noble truth. The third one is, of course, well, can we suspend or destroy the cause of our suffering? And then in the fourth element, Buddha has his eightfold path, and Krishnamurti then, as a big difference with Buddha, says there is no method whatsoever. Though I'm reading a thesis by an American Krishnamurti scholar, and he says the total insight into what is of the mind, that is kind of the eye of the needle you have to thread through to get to the other side.
Hello,
But
hello.
there is no method. Dr. Koshy, you're back again. We're just
I'm
discussing.
so sorry that I was not knowing.
No,
I didn't check the screen. I was continuing
oh,
speaking. So I couldn't realize that the connection. Actually, I now see that my laptop got stuck. Very,
No,
very sad.
we can continue. We
no
can continue.
problem, sir. I think yes, we can continue.
Sure, sure.
Yes, your video is now visible.
Now I'm doing it from my phone.
Thanks a lot,
Sorry.
Professor.
I was talking about three senses of nihilism. Is it audible to you now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Three senses of nihilism I was speaking about. This is positing of higher truths about the world and life. Due to deficiency of power in a person, the changing nature of the world creates chaos and insecurity in him. The changing character of the world is explained through Nietzsche's theory of becoming, according to which the world, its objects and humans are in perpetual flux. A transient state of things and human life makes man dreadful. What frightens him most is the awareness that his body, physical beauty, achievements in life, and near and dearer ones are perishable. The knowledge that all the possessions and precious things hitherto gained by person ultimately slip away from his hands is very alarming. To overcome this situation, man creates changeless truths, concepts, values, and a supernatural structure and possesses them over and above change, thereby human beings deny the empirical world. Philosophies and religions repeatedly assert that the world is in a changing one, thus unreal. They insist there must be a better world than this one, a beyond, a supernatural, sensual world. For them, the world of senses is a world of appearance, which is less real, as seen in the philosophies of Plato, Descartes, Leibniz, Berkeley, Christianity, Vedanta, and many Asian philosophies. Thus, this world and this life is at bottom negative. Becoming creates insecurity and discomfort, which is scary for humans. There will not be any truth to anchor upon in a world of change. Human beings therefore need to find psychological security to pull on in such a world, to get mental power. Human being create a world of becoming consisting of logical categories, enduring thing, soul, or a set of values. And supersensible, transient world to sustain in life. Thereby, they avert tragedy in life. Religions, philosophies, metaphysics, morality, and the natural sciences are all outcomes of human search for meaning, security, and protection in the world of change, which enable them the worldly life bearable. By doing so, humans find courage, comfort, and security to navigate this ocean of change that devastates all the foundations of life. This is how the will to power produces truth. Thus, truth are interpretations and not pre-existing thing. Man thus finds power to live. Thus, rather than considering truth, knowledge, and moral values as pre-existing, they shall be understood as things produced by the will to power. They are the outcome of the human need to find strength to survive in a chaotic world. However, this act of creating higher truths led to diminishing the value of the natural world. Change is the reality of the world and life. Change shall not be a phenomenon to be warded off. Becoming is a dynamic and creative process that brings comfort and growth. The positive dimension of change has to be recognized. And then another sense of nihilism is devaluation of values. Nietzsche says the highest values devaluates themselves. What are the highest celebrated values in our civilization? Honesty, mutual love, faith in God, generosity, compassion, sympathy, piety, humility, and simplicity are examples of values that have illuminated the world's cultural landscape, particularly the European landscape, over the past 2000 years. These values have hitherto been the guiding principles for the people of the West, which have helped them navigate life smoothly. These values now lose their strength. They lose their efficacy and potency to function well in the current times. This devaluation of values is a historical process resulting from the world's perpetual becoming. Since everything changes, values cannot remain unchanged. Even the sun, moon, stars, hard metals, and mountains, which are considered stable, also change. Then how can values remain unchanged? When there is a transformation of human life and nature, human-made values and truths will also change. These values and truths have been effective in providing light to humanity in the past. However, they have now lost that strength, efficacy to sustain a meaningful culture. Nietzsche's famous statement, the death of God, symbolizes the devaluation of values. This proclamation implies not only the disappearance of the concept of God in Christianity, but also marks the collapse of the supernatural truths and values that philosophers from Plato onwards established as foundational principles. Most of these values cherished by Europe as great were, in fact, grounded on the Christian notion of God. The death of God has made two kinds of repercussions in modern times. One of them is that the truths and moral concepts that existed till then are being shattered, which produces meaninglessness in life. The other consequence is that it opened up new possibilities in life. Human beings can now create new expeditions, new ventures. The sea is now open to conduct unending expeditions and voyages. It is now left to human beings to make their destiny. However, the meaninglessness of life produced by God's disappearance becomes a great problem to be addressed in the present times. God's absence has created a vacuum in the life of the people. They are now without the mental courage, power that was earlier available to them to sustain in the world, this world of becoming. And this leads to the third sense of nihilism, which is meaninglessness of modern times. The meaninglessness of modern times is a continuation and consequence of the devaluation of values. Values were the guiding ideals for men in their lives. So far, values have given mankind a goal and direction for moving forward in life. In the absence of values, people will lose all directions, lose aim or a goal or a sense of purpose in life. This caused utter meaninglessness. The meaninglessness of life became a lived experience of the 20th century human beings. In the absence of any goal, humans can only commit suicide or react destructively. This predicament of the contemporary human being is depicted by Albert Camus, who has said that suicide shall be the most important philosophical problem of the 20th century. The entire 20th century literature, if you look at, addresses the problem of meaninglessness. In the absence of great goals and great experience, people seek comfort elsewhere. Some find solace in TV entertainments, some in consumerist pleasure, some in modern day charismatic meditation centers, some in pulp literature or superficial entertainments like pornography. These turned out to be temporary consolations for those who tormented by worldly life and which lacks any profound meanings and goals. The absence of profound meaning in the present world leads some people to embrace nationalism, materialism, and authoritarianism as substitutes. The growing number of terroristic activities in modern times, in the form of suicide attacks and bombings, reminds us that meaninglessness can even lead humans to destructive acts. For life to be meaningful in the absence of values, new values must emerge. If new values have not been born, they must be created. Nietzsche sees this as a mission that future philosophers must undertake. And there is modern science comes in the aftermath of depth of God. Modern science and technology is considered is a new hope for humanity that could fill the vacuum created by the disappearance of God. However, for Nietzsche, modern science is not entirely free from religious beliefs and metaphysical consolations. Two features of modern science give it as an ascetic nihilistic character. One is that science also abstracts truths, axioms, concepts, and laws and posits a higher order of reality over nature. Like religious metaphysics, it also posits a higher transcendental order of truth over the sensual world. Secondly, by replacing all the religious beliefs, science presents itself as the new religion of modern man, who finds a goal, a solace, a peace, and hope in it. Thus, modern science for Nietzsche is nothing but a substitute for old religion. But the problem is that this is science is devoid of roots in the empirical world and natural instincts and desires. For him, activation of that alone is capable to overcome nihilism. And then it is associated with his notion of will to power. Will to power, as I was telling in the beginning, is a force that motivates all organisms to grow higher by overcoming obstacles and feel elevated and embraced. The will to power expresses in the forms of pleasure, knowledge, morality, education, religion, and art. All these are derivatives, various manifestations and configurations of will to power. While we experience pleasure, it is the power we experience. While having knowledge, we feel more empowered and enhanced. However, many of the readers of Nietzsche believe that his philosophy is meant to endorse conquering. Power means ruling over, oppressing, exploiting, and subjugating over other humans. This is the general sense people have about Nietzsche. But he does not conceive overpowering others as a desirable manifestation of the will to power. That tendency is a negative manifestation of power. Positively, will to power is manifested in the expressions of love, heroism, creativity, generosity, gracefulness, artistic creativity, and experience of beauty. Positive power only wants to feel oneself exalted and enhanced. Power seeking becomes a conscious activity only for the negative people. They create opportunities to possess power and exercise power over others. gaining powerful positions in socio-political institutions, universities, colleges, becoming chairperson, becoming administrators, leaders, rulers, warriors, and priests are such instances of the will to power. They are, by that, they could exercise some amount of power over others, but they are nihilistic, negative manifestations of will to power. See, let me ask you one thing. Due to the loss of few minutes, some 20 minutes in between, what shall I do? Shall we, I limit the duration of my presentation, or what do you suggest?
We can ask the audience if audience is fine with the usual the normal talk with unabridged version of the talk, then we can continue without cutting down portions.
Okay.
Does anybody have problem? I think we can try finishing it by 11:15.
Okay.
Okay, that would be fine.
Okay, cool. Let's try to wrap.
I
Talk
must
by
explain
11.
the structure of
Yeah.
negativity, the
Okay.
reactivity,
Yeah. And then
nihilistic
we
tendency.
can. Yeah, and then we can have a conversation for like 15 minutes question answer session.
Okay, okay.
And someone has
What is
raised a
the origin
hand.
of reaction and negativity? It is due to deficiency of power in some people. Some people fail to, due to that, they fail to indulge in higher order of activities that enhances their life. But those who are overfull with power experiences, intensities, and excesses of life, they creatively flourish in existence with robust health and sensual pleasure. This creates envy and resentment among the weak and incapable towards the strong, those who are faring well and flourishing in life. Resentment is a deep-seated feeling of frustration and hostility in a person, accompanied by a sense of powerlessness to express it directly. It originates in slavish mentality, stemming from envy towards those who are prosperous and perform better than one. It is a mixture of feeling of hatred, envy, contempt, and vengeance. When a happy person encounters someone successful and happy, when an unhappy person encounters someone successful and happy, he feels resentment. The prospect that the other one will get more recognition than him in the public is not palatable to him. To overcome their inferiority, that the weak people need to do is to strive more and hard work than the strong by faring well and excelling in virtues. For that, they have to work hard and express their desires. However, the weak people, incapable of doing that, wanted to undermine the strong, impairing and maligning them. Therefore, in place of hard work, they turn against the strong, perceiving them as their enemy. Thus, the weak pulls the strong down to his level. He sets the level of his level as the standard for living. And if anything is seen as surpassing that limit, is labeled as bad, egoism, eccentricity, and evil. This discourse creates guilt in the strong people. So their power to act is diminished or taken away from them. Ascetic attitude is another outcome of the deficiency of power in a person. Ascetic attitude also stems from a deficiency of power in one. It is born in people who are incapable of having sensual pleasures, like love and sexuality. Thus, they preach the value of asceticism in life and deny sensual pleasures as evil, and as seen in religion and moral discourses. Those who indulge in love and sexuality are characterized as enemies of humanity and malign them. Thus, they create guilt in them. To say an example, when a girl and a boy are immersed in the experience of love, they only express their positive power without giving any attention to the outside world. This is the nature of the active willpower. They express their inner power spontaneously, but those who are incapable of creating love in their life feel jealousy and react with resentment and hatred towards them. They set out to sabotage their love affair by informing police or parents. This is where the reaction comes into play. Armed with moral discourses and religious beliefs, they act against the lovers to end their affair. The action of the forces of negativity thus comes in the form of counteraction against those who are active. Their action are fundamentally reactions. They always need a hostile other to act upon. Does not act independently. Instead, hatred for the joyful people triggers their acts of negation. Nietzsche's observation is that all institutions of modernity, such as religious institutions, morality, the judiciary, the police, the army, social organizations, and statist politics, are constituted by reactive attitude. They are fueled by the psychological sentiments of vengeance and hatred. In the absence of power, nihilistic forces set out to diminish the positive forces' ability to act. That is the strategy. They set out to diminish the power of the positive forces to act. Nihilistic forces succeed in limiting the actions of the affirmative humans by jeopardizing their capacity for action, by creating guilt in them through morality. They take away the power of the affirmative humans to act. So they are also made inactive or nihilistic. Preaching moral values of mercy, pity, humility, meekness, and compassion enables them to destroy happy people mentally. The positive people are also thus turned into inactive. In modern times, the reaction of the nihilistic forces is expressed through the formation of political organizations, governments, rules, and courts of law. Nietzsche considers that judiciary and legal systems are devices evolved by the weak to limit the actions of the strong. The weak, which are herd type, impose restrictions on the strong through concepts like justice and equality. It is a person's weakness or deficiency of power that leads him to join groups like political parties and associations, and that enables him to feel powerful, more powerful. Religions and political parties actually serve this function. The coming together of such people as a larger configurations give them power, as we see in fascistic formation in recent times. When such individuals join hands, they can produce more power and exercise it over the life-affirming forces. Indeed, they aim to create a larger congregation to prevent capable people from discharging their actions. The present social life has become one of vengeance, accusation, guilt, and asceticism. Modernity is thus the age of creating guilt in humans, thereby making them into confessing beings. The accused who admits guilt before the court of law, the patient who confesses their failures before the psychiatrist, and the believer who confesses their sin to the church priest are the products of such a civilization of vengeance. What the judge, the policeman, or the doctor, or the priest demand from man is their surrender, their forfeiture of the strength of their lives. And then, as I was talking in the beginning, he hopes, Nietzsche hoped for a new age. A new age can dawn only by overcoming nihilism that creates resentment, guilt in worldly life. The creation of a new era beyond asceticism requires welcoming both the positive and negative aspects of existence. The existing civilization founded on negativity has to be replaced by an affirmative one. Nietzsche's thought calls for a worldly spirituality against the goals set by religious, philosophical, and scientific worldviews. A worldly spirituality celebrates the body, nature's beauty, and sensory experience as divine. Hitherto, they have been considered as evil by religious traditions due to fear of them as pain-causing ephemeral phenomena. However, from the perspective of Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, these phenomena, though ephemeral, their endless repetition will create joy in existence. Man can experience the entire world encompassing all living and non-living beings as an ocean of joy, thus a potent source of happiness. The aesthetic affirmation of existence taught by Nietzsche creates an occasion to experience the entire world as an ocean of beauty and divinity. The joyful wisdom of it will glorify this earth and all its life streams as sacred. To resist and defeat negativity, what is needed is to retrieve the natural impulses, innocence, creativity, sensuality, and libidinal desires of the body back. It requires defeating those negative forces that have imposed restrictions on the expression of human natural dispositions. Religions, philosophies, morality, and state apparatus are major configurations that propagate negativity. Through them, nihilism seeps into humanity and undermines the fertility of life. All these forms of negativity do so by their unwillingness to accept the uncertainties that becoming creates in life. Therefore, they construct a transcendental world of permanence above change. It leads to the abandonment of sensual world of appearance, which is the real world. They turn against life, accusing existence as evil thing. Nietzsche reminds us that pleasure is always coupled with the pain and loss. Loss and suffering shall not be reasons to stay away from life. This universe, which is a world of multiplicity, is a mixture of pleasures, pains, destructions, death, disease, joys, and sorrows. If one requires joyful experiences from it, he shall be ready to welcome pain as well. But due to their lack of power, weak people find it difficult to withstand painful experiences. Therefore, they reject the world altogether. All elements of this world are necessary to make life joyful. Worldly life can only be happy if one is willing to accept the joys as well as sorrows. One cannot revel in spring festivals, the dances, the love, if he is not ready to undergo burns, losses, partings, and separations. Youthfulness becomes so precious only in the backdrop of old age and death. The great drama of life can take place in the world only if there are wars, epidemics, and disease, as well as serenity of the green pastures. Such an absolute affirmation of everything in existence makes Nietzsche's philosophy a gospel of this world, functioning as a counter position to all negative discourses that led man to pessimism. The works of art are representation of this to Nietzsche. It is in the work of art that the colorfulness of life, which negative forces have prohibited, is preserved. Nietzsche's Dionysian worldview, which evolved from ancient Greeks, is presented as a counter perspective to the Christian and Enlightenment views of human existence. The Dionysian phenomenon asks individuals to embrace the totality of life, including its darkest and most painful aspects, without recourse to metaphysical consolations. Thus, to find joy, saying yes and amen, affirmation to every setbacks is also necessary. Tragic is the fate awaited for those who dare to indulge in excess experience and exceed the boundaries drawn by conventional morality. Prometheus is such a Greek character who had to endure suffering for stealing fire from the gods, which was available only to the gods. Such terrors and setbacks awaits all those who strive to climb higher peaks of life. Dionysian represents an aesthetic perspective of life. Nietzsche wanted to exalt art as a counter force to all the religions and philosophies that have denied life as an unjustifiable object. Life is felt as unjustifiable, not worth living, when human beings approach it as a moral phenomenon. Life is a dynamic process of growth, struggle, and decay. It operates according to natural drives, instincts, and the will to power, which are forces that do not adhere to human moral frameworks. When viewed through the moral lens, the natural processes of emergence and destruction of things in the world often entail suffering, conflict, and injustice. From a moral point of view, man finds life's most fundamental characteristics such as decay, competition, struggle, and contradictions to be unacceptable. Because of their unwillingness to accept everything, morality and religion find life unjustifiable. To justify life, humans impose moral categories such as good, evil, sin, humility, equality, compassion, dispassion, and afterlife, which are alien to life. On the contrary, art and aesthetics enables humans to confront these contradictions and find meaning and beauty within them. Through art, the painful and chaotic aspects of existence are transformed into something that can be appreciated and celebrated. It embraces the chaos of life and uses it as a raw material for creating grandeur in existence. Religion and metaphysics find life as an unjustifiable object. Against it, Nietzsche held that it is through art that life on earth is eternally justified. This was the shield Nietzsche upheld against all nihilistic philosophies, religions, and politics that depreciated the value of life. Coming into conclusion, Nietzsche presents life affirmation through the metaphor of dice play, as explained in The Spoke Zarathustra. A player who throws dice does not always get a favorable combination of numbers that will make him successful. Numbers that give success will be gained only occasionally. But human beings often become like a player who stops playing and withdraws when they fail after throwing dice in the first or second round. Seeing that many of their efforts are in vain, human beings are unwilling to move forward and withdraw from playing dice. Besides, they accuse life and judge that the very life itself is failure and all efforts are ultimately end in vain. Like Buddha, they say that life is full of pain and suffering. Thus, they turn against life and become reactive to it. Finding sorrow and failure leads them to inactivity to the extent of embracing consolations offered by otherworldly religions and metaphysics. What is actually needed is to keep playing dice without getting frustrated by failures until the winning combination comes. Therefore, keep throwing the dice again and again. Like a player who shows the courage to throw dice again, humans need to acquire the strength to plunge deeper into life with increasing vigor, even after repeated failures. He who knows that eternal recurrence will one day bring back all those precious things we have lost will not desist from playing. This approach is what Nietzsche presents as the aesthetic attitude to life. This attitude Nietzsche calls amor fati, the great love of fate, affirmation of fatality. This is the Dionysian view of life that Nietzsche's optimistic philosophy upholds, which accepts life with all its contradictions and destructions and losses. It holds enormous significance today as a new gospel for humanity offered to future human living in the twilight zone of a new age after the demise of God, religions, and ideologies. This is where the ethico-political dimension of Nietzsche's thought becomes significant. I think we have lost some of the crucial parts.
But still, thanks a lot, Professor. It was really insightful. Now we can open the floor for discussion. You can raise your hand and then go ahead. Yes, Govard Schuler. Please go ahead.
Yes. Dr. Koshy, thank you so much for a good presentation of the ethical and aesthetic part of Nietzsche. What about the more political part? I did a class many years ago at the political science department at the American University, and we went into Nietzsche, but specifically about his politics. And there was this idea that yes, he's very positive about the possibility of becoming a free spirit. Yeah, we really dug into the book Human All Too Human, where he makes the political point that we need something of a class system where the upper class can enable free spirits to do their creativity, which is necessary for society to keep, renew itself and stay vital. But it's a very class system that he is in favor of. He almost accepted liberal democracy as possibly the best system for free spirits to flourish. But then I found out that later he becomes very autocratic or authoritarian in his concept of society, where the lower classes are really demeaned in his philosophy, and where he gives all kinds of ammunition for the later fascists to pick him up. Although, really, to be very short, Nietzsche was very against anti-Semitism, against nationalism, and all kinds of other, lesser ideologies. So I'd like you to address this thing about how Nietzsche thought, or how you think that Nietzsche thought would be the best political structure of society for the flourishing of free spirits.
You see, the issue is that Nietzsche never propounds any centralized thought, a political thought, and does not put forward any well-formed theoretical position. His views are scattered in his texts in the forms of aphorisms in various texts throughout. He had written in various speeds, various period of times. And by taking some of the opinions, if we take some of the opinions, we feel that they are contradicting to many of the later pronouncements he made in his works. So it is very hard to assert or give a political theory by taking few of the, for instance, lying in few texts. Particularly, you are mentioning about the human all-human, which was a very earlier text. It was the second text he had written at his youthful time, and he has moved forward further and further away from that text, and there are his opinion keeps on changing when it comes to the spoke Zarathustra and genealogy of morals and the later works like that. And you mentioned about class system, but and hierarchy, and you also talked about the fascist element, that actually the fascist was taking hold of his thought without his involvement. These all fascistic interpretations comes about his text, about his philosophy and texts are only a later happening aftermath of his demise in the first year of the 20th century, and it was during 20th in the 20th century, 1907 or 1909, for the first time, fascists have visited Nietzsche's archives by the invitation of his sister Elizabeth, that they appropriated his texts in favor of fascism, which has already been exposed by many Nietzsche scholars like Walter Kaufmann and all, how he cannot be identified with the fascism or how the fascists are wrongly interprets their texts, misappropriates his text for their political purpose. And while coming to the accusation that he was an anti-Semitic, and there are many passages in Nietzsche, we could see that he is saying against anti-Semitism. He always says about the need of becoming a good European, and the basic clash between the reason of basic clash between his sister Elizabeth and his brother-in-law was this was the issue. They were anti-Semitic, and Nietzsche was against anti-Semitism. That led to the separation of Nietzsche from Elizabeth. And what actually I'm doing is that I'm not looking at Nietzsche based on some of the pronouncements he made occasionally in some of the early texts. Rather, what I am trying to find is to extract or draw the possibilities Nietzsche's philosophy carries for our future, for a new age, based on his philosophy of affirmation. Affirmation is a state of mind that does not oppose anything contrary to it. It is the affirmation of everything in existence, even pain, pleasures, enemies. One is no more felt as enemy while one becomes an affirmer of life. And it is in this regard I'm focusing at Nietzsche's philosophy, and my intention is to draw a positive political perspective from Nietzsche's philosophy.
Yeah.
There is ample
No,
possibility.
I'm very much with you there, indeed. And just for the record, I was not saying that he was anti-Semitic, but on the contrary, I'm very aware that he was anti-Semitic, and he was anti-nationalistic, and that his thinking is later, some of his later thinking cannot be described as fascist, but there was a certain authoritarian streaks. And those were the things that, of course, then the fascists appropriated, misinterpreted, and then skewed for their own political use. So in that way, I hope we're on the on the same page there. But I do think the political implications of his thinking, though it's very hard to see how that might work out, are I think indeed very, very important, because on an individual level, he can be very, very inspiring. But then to think through the implications at a political level of political economic structuration of society, I think there's a lot to be learned from him. Though of course, yes, he never systematically worked out like this is the this is the best way to do society. The theme that I wanted to accentuate is this idea that there have to be freedom for free spirits to do original, creative, provocative work for society to stay, to renew itself and not get crystallized into something, where everybody is just conforming to some kind of norm. And I'm with Nietzsche there. Yeah, we need provocative, creative people like you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Professor Shule. I see Amarjeet has raised a hand. Yes, Amarjeet.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So I want to take some issue with the philosophy of affirmation. Specifically, the issue as I see it is that we are surrounded in some sense by, I'm sorry, there's a lot of background noise over here, so I'm not able to think. So the issue as I see it is that we are surrounded by reminders of the fact that life is suffering, as it were. To become an affirmationist, we have to, in some sense, identify that suffering is part and parcel of life, and we'll accept it in order to get to some goal that we identify for ourselves, for nature. That goal will be preeminently, we'll be the ones to decide what the goal is. It's not going to come from any god, it's not going to come from any culture or anything of that sort. The problem with that is that if you become the person who creates your own set of values, as it were, what you've basically done there is you have not gotten rid of God from the system, you have made yourself the God. And this kind of theotic urge does not actually emerge with Nietzsche. It goes as far back as at least Origen and the Neoplatonics, the Gnostics, who believed that we could cultivate within ourselves the truth, that we could discover it within ourselves. The problem with that is that that's what our society is doing all the time. Modernity is about that. It's about people fancying themselves as godly figures. How does Nietzsche then become a radical figure for today? It seems like he would be a conformist today, because that's what society is more or less oriented towards.
Yeah, very, very insightful, good question. And your contention is that uh, setting values by oneself is not sufficient to develop a positive politics, and this was the thing doing by many previous philosophies like Neoplatonists and many others are doing. But what is the specificity of Nietzsche is that Nietzsche provides the psychological roots, the subtle psychological roots that working behind the claims like the meaning of goodness, the meaning of justice, the meaning of law, the meaning of politics. He exposes that these all are rooted in based on the will to power. It is not, none of them are pre-existing. All these values of truth, justice, goodness have been interpreted by the will to power from in various epochs, those who are dominant in society. And considering the present political milieu, social milieu, the existing values like goodness, justice, truth, if we go into roots of them, the origin of them, that is where his genealogy comes. This have originated in a certain period of time in history, and they were not eternally existing. And it is the interpretation of negative kind of will to power. Those who are felt resentment and hate towards sensuality, the better performing individuals who created these values out of resentment. That is what happened while the modern era, stemming from Christian Platonic period, that period onwards. There, Nietzsche traces a reversal of values, reversal from the meaning of earlier meaning we had about values of good, right, and justice. And in the Greek antiquity felt the meaning of goodness differently from the moderns. And there was a reversal of values. What he explains is that the present values, that was the foundation of our present civilization and present political establishments were negative and born out of resentment and guilt and ascetic ideal. That has to be changed. This is a subtle psychological observation which could none of them, the earlier philosophers you mentioned, provide. And that is where therein I see the great merit of Nietzsche. That would be a guiding principle for us to reinterpret the present political theories, which so far nobody attempted. There are ample scope for that to reinterpret the founding principles of modern politics from Nietzsche's perspective of will to power. Mine was a very simple attempt to do that. There are many things to be done more, but it was a preliminary analysis to highlight its possibilities. That was, I think, what I was trying to do.
Thank you, sir.
I think Danny has a question in the chat. So I'll just read it out. Danny says, "Hello, sir. Jesus talked about how one should love his enemy. I just wanted to ask, what was Nietzsche's philosophy on love?" Am I audible?
Yeah, I'm very much audible.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Love has various dimensions and interpretations, though it is not a point of discussion in my paper. I am tempted to answer your question. Love, actually, all this depends on how do you approach love. There is a Christian concept of loving uh, your enemy or loving your neighbor. Is that the love you want to know? You mentioned while asking question, I do not know. Or there are another kinds of love, like erotic love or love of the youth, libidinal love. Yeah, and Nietzsche distinguishes, I think, between these various types of love. The Christian love, for instance, that was the predominant form of love. Love the other without uh, without any regard for outcome or benefit, impartial, sacrificial love, the Christian love. He exposes that love uh, as a untruth, non-existing, anti-psychological, because loving your enemy is a device used by Christian Judaic tradition to oppose the erotic and libidinal love experienced in earlier civilizations of Greeks and Greek period. In Greek period, love, the meaning of love means the love of the youth, romantic, who out of their libidinal excess expressed it directly without any regard or consequences. This is the expression of one's internal will to power, the positive will to power. Whereas the loving your enemy or loving other as the ideal types of love is a later interpretation brought by Christian theology. Because in Nietzsche's opinion, this interpretation of love comes from from those people who are incapable, the ascetic type of people, who do not have the ability to express their libidinal love due to lack of power, due to deficiency of libidinal energy in them. They are incapable to have sexual kind of love, the romantic kind of love. So they felt resentment against those who express lovers. So they reinterpret in order to overthrow them from society. That the meaning of love is not that. Loving other is the true meaning of love. So that means you must not love each other. You should love me and all people. This is the one interpretation of, I think, love we could extract from Nietzsche's philosophy. And I think I'm clear about it. I don't know whether.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Anani asked this question, isn't it?
Sorry?
It was your question. Am I sufficiently answered to this?
Yeah,
I do not know.
it wasn't my question. It was Danny's question. He put it in chat. So I just read it out loud for you.
Okay. I hope I am answered sufficiently.
Yeah, Danny says yes. Do we have any other questions? We have Subhashri asking a question in the chat. She says, thank you for an insightful discussion. Nietzsche says that the will to power can overcome the shackles of morality. But where does this power come from?
Yeah. Where is the origin, the source of power? Is a very crucial question. Nietzsche explains that it is innate to the world, innate to the universe. All bodies are driven, animated, or motivated by the by power. Power is like a libido of the psychoanalyst. It's an internal triggering force internal to all bodies, physical as well as organic and inorganic bodies of the universe. It is due to power rivers flow and plants grow and there is becoming in the world. The process of becoming, change, takes place due to the power, the driving force that animates, drives all beings and bodies in the world. Earlier, the understanding, particularly it comes from Aristotle and also Newtonian physics. They both say that bodies cannot move or act by its own. There should be a power triggering them to act from outside, from above. And that is why Aristotle talked about God as the unmoved mover that creates movement on bodies from outside, from beyond. Unless that is exerted on, such a power is exerted on bodies, no body can move or make any movements. And this same idea is repeated in a different way in Newtonian physics. Newton says that nobody can move until and unless a power is exerted on it. But Nietzsche is probably the first philosopher explained that no body is required any force from outside to make movements. It is the will to power, internal to it, that working from within them, that triggers or makes movement in bodies. And I think this is an unconscious driving force in the universe, within organisms, that drives all beings. And in the case of human beings, there is a higher manifestation of it in various forms of power, like will to power as knowledge, will to power as education, will to power as art, will to power as freedom. And in all these instances of it is power that we experience, and it is due to power that we go to get education, because knowledge elevates us. Having knowledge, getting knowledge enhances us from the present to a higher level, and listening to music elevates us, enhances, and it is an experience of power in us. And having love during love, experience of love, romantic love particularly, we are elevated to a higher plane, enhancement, and these all are instances of power. And it happens by expressing the power which is lying within bodies, each one of us. And this is a source of will to power.
Thanks a lot, Professor, for the insightful answer. We have Himanshu raising his hand. Yeah, Himanshu. Go ahead.
My question is a little unrelated to Nietzsche, but if we have some other question related to Nietzsche. Okay, so thank you for the presentation, sir. The most of your this talk was in English, but we know that besides English, you've also worked a lot in Malayalam itself. Now, my question is that how do you think, what has been your personal experience working on Nietzsche or whatever you besides Nietzsche also works on in Malayalam language? And second, how do you observe that scholarship in Malayalam, and what differences? I'm not asking about similarities, but what is that you find different from English scholarship in India? Of course, we are talking than the Malayalam scholarship. So mostly, it's about your experience about that and what makes you more motivated about that. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. I need to reflect upon more about it to say a very clear and extensive answer. But still, I feel that in Malayalam and India, I do not know about all languages. But in English, I couldn't see any very good scholarly works on Nietzsche. And Malayalam also is the case. Malayalam, so basically, Nietzsche's philosophy are followed and pursued by literary critics and poets and creative writers than philosophy people. They, I actually, during my early college years, I used to read Malayalam literary criticisms, and from their works, I first got inspiration to this area: Nietzsche, Albert Camus, and Sartre. There is a work called Existentialism of Sartre, Sartre Asceticism, a full 20 to 250 pages. I got inspiration from the writers like them. And other than that, but the issue is that while literary figures and poets and critics approaches and writes and comments about complex philosophers like Nietzsche, and many of their complexities have not reflected in their writings. We need hardcore philosophical background also to interpret his many of the ideals like becoming interpretation, truth as interpretation. But that things are lacking in the literary interpreters of Nietzsche. And in I have published a book in Malayalam, as you have seen in my bio, and that was widely appreciated because people know that Nietzsche is a very for all of them, Nietzsche is a very interesting figure because of his philosophy's closeness to everyday life and human psychological aspects. So they are many of them are fascinated, and there was a very good welcome and larger audience and readership I got for my book. The first book, or its 1,000 copies are already sold out, and it is now in the reprint. And I, while writing, I write in Malayalam, not only write commentaries about philosophers, and I apply them. I perceive the social phenomena, language, and cultural aspects through the lens of Nietzsche and other philosophers. So my writing about Nietzsche are not just commentaries of these philosophers, but it is I apply Nietzsche and post-structuralist and existentialist and phenomenological perspective while I interpreted and critique cultural phenomena. That is the way I write mostly, and this is the way I approach.
Can I add just a small point? So as you mentioned, that besides let's say proper philosopher, hardcore philosopher, the literary critics had in some way had already built that ground for Nietzsche. But do you encounter any difficulties writing in Malayalam those difficult concepts, or does Malayalam provide you any advantage in explaining that or exploring that to yourself first of all, and later to your audience also? Yeah.
Yeah. Very good question. You see, in many of the vernacular regional languages, we do not get the exact words to represent these complex terms and terminologies of European philosophy, like essence. We are lacking that because our philosophical thinking and all are oriented on a different kinds of terminology and different addresses different kinds of issues. So it's true that if one attempt to translate or explain them, apply them direct. But what I feel that I never find any difficulty because it is not a literal translation or exact terminologies in our language we are trying to find. Instead, we get an experience of them, and out of that experience, vocabularies, science, and linguistic symbols automatically comes when we are affected by it. When we are affected by a philosophy, and there is no need to search to find exact words for them. It comes automatically because out of our affected state, new images, new words, new significations are brought out from us. And so for me, I never felt any difficulty, but it was a spontaneous process in the case of mine.
Thank you very much, sir. I think maybe others like me or someone else can also learn how to do that with other languages. Thank you.
Do we have any questions left? I don't think so. So I'll just ask one last question and then we can maybe conclude the session with that. So thanks a lot, Professor Koshy, for an insightful talk. I was wondering, there's this concept called order of rank in Nietzsche's philosophy where he talks about, which is for him, the criterion that differentiates a noble from a base soul. That is, say, the hierarchy of drives within a person. So I was wondering, would the political setup that Nietzsche endorses be a reflection of this hierarchy of drives within someone? Or like, would it be reflective of a society on a large or a culture on a large?
Yeah, this is a question repeatedly asked, mostly by critics of Nietzsche, that Nietzsche is a defender of caste system. He speaks about order of and rank, segmentation of society, but I always I'm not interested in exploring further these points in Nietzsche because I always felt that noble and base or high and low cannot be categories in terms of hierarchical social ordering like caste or creed, because noble and base are present in all human beings, cutting across class, creed, or rank. Because it is nobility and baseness are not a question of class or caste, but it is the kind of willpower operating within you. Mm-hmm. And nobility is an expression of positive willpower. Those who experience gladness, those who are affected by nature, the beauty of nature, they are driven by love of the world, love of other human beings. It is a spontaneous overflow of overflow. The nobility is the origin of nobility, and that nobility cannot be determined or explained in terms of orders or ranks, and baseness happens, as I was explaining in my talk in the beginning, that baseness is the result or outcome of negativity, hatred, resentment. That originates basically from deficiency of power, deficiency of libidinal energy in oneself. So such people cannot express or cannot indulge or experience this kind of experience of beautifulness or libidinal experiences of love. Out of their inability, they feel jealous, resentment against those who have those experiences. And this is how baseness emerges among human beings. And it cannot be explained. It is, I think I always against those people who try to understand baseness and nobility in terms of order and rank and caste system. This is not the way to approach Nietzsche's philosophy. And these are all there are writings that give scope for them to Nietzsche, to many of the critics of Nietzsche to approach, interpret him on that way. But I won't approach Nietzsche in that way. There are other possibilities for explaining nobility and baseness. I basically focus on that.
Okay, so it's more about each individual itself having those categories within themselves instead of the categories being an objective determination of people as a whole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks a lot for the answer. We'll just take one last question and we'll wrap the session. Yes,
Yes.
Sophia.
Okay, sir, nice presentation. One point that I thought could be elaborated was of the aesthetic attitude, which you mentioned as Nietzsche's solution to the problem of this weakness and negative reactive will to power, which causes all kind of fascist tendencies and violence and resentment and all. So when it is possible that this aesthetic attitude can be misconceived or confused as anything that is passed as art, like is all art a solution to these problems, because there can be artwork produced out of resentment to if out of a kind of a attitude or kind of a challenge or kind of mastery, or kind of a master morality. So in such cases, those artworks has a different kind of effect upon people, and on the other hand, when there is contentment and power and strength and when one is in the process of becoming, the artwork which happens out of such a person or such a attitude would have a different kind of effect. So wouldn't it be necessary to kind of understand what is really art when it is very easy to to misunderstand the aesthetic attitude in Nietzsche?
Yeah, aesthetic and art have to be distinguished, I suppose. Because aesthetic is an attitude to the world we hold. And art is only an expression of that. Aesthetic is a life affirmative attitude. It is saying, yes, accept the world with all its changes and becoming and decay and death, dying, frustration. Saying yes and amen to all phenomena. This is a way to joyfulness. This joyfulness getting through affirmation of the entirety, contradictions, multiplicity. This is the meaning of aesthetic. The dice player who throw dice, though fails in many of the attempts, keeps on playing dice, throwing dice. Likewise, those who indulge deeply into life, even after repeated failures, and then only experiences joy of existence. This is the Dionysian aesthetic attitude Nietzsche speaks about. And however, this attitude, these experiences are seldom available in contemporary times, in modern lives, because you are restricted by morality, you are restricted by laws of the state, and restricted by public opinion. Therefore, instead of expressing them directly in your personal life, you create them in another domain. That is how works of art comes in. Works of art are those expressions of feelings and emotions and ecstasies of life that was denied by in the social domain. That is one thing. So art preserves them in a nihilistic social order. So art's value is so high because only in art such experiences are found a space in modernity. And then coming to your question, whether all arts does this? No, all art does not do this. There are, like there is negative and positive in artistic expressions, or also there are positive and negative. For example, propaganda, art as propaganda. Propaganda does not come from out of this intensities of bodily experience. They are thought out. They are products of thought out plans. So they could not be considered as genuine arts. That is one thing. And then even out of the experiences of life also, there are many kinds of art are produced. One example is romantic art. Romantic art, Nietzsche had a very negative opinion because romantic art is similar to the Christian art because it is the crying, the pains, and the suffering experienced by one in his failure of his project, out of his failure of projects in life. So it comes from deficiency, not from overflowing. There are two kinds of art Nietzsche speaks about. One comes from overflowing energy and ecstasies, excess life, and one comes from deficiency of life. Deficiency is of lack of power, failures. Nietzsche criticizes romantic art basically as arts coming from deficiencies, lack of power. Because what one does in romantic art is creating sentiments in others also, negativity in others also, by projecting your failures, your pains, and spreading it to others. When others get it, instead of enhancement of their body and power, these bodily experiences are only diminished. Willpower is diminished only in such occasions. So Nietzsche has always talked the idea of art Nietzsche had about classical vision of art, coming out of excess energy, and that is poured automatically in overflowed into works of art, spontaneous. It is not a planned activity, and we need to distinguish this arts coming from deficiency and excess. Whenever we evaluate works of art from Nietzsche's perspective, this is what I have to say.
Thanks a lot, Professor. So
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
yeah, we'll now wrap up the lecture by thanking Professor Koshy again. Thanks a lot for the informative and insightful talk. We all, I'm sure, have benefited immensely from it. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.